Hi, I'm here today with Sean from Lafayette Dental Lab. My name is David from LabStar, and we're going to talk today about how good dental lab software saves time in communicating and assigning works to your lab staff. So, Sean, tell me a little bit about your lab, what type of work you guys do, how many people are in your lab.
We're about a 10-man lab. We do fixed crown and bridge. So a lot of implant cases, a lot of veneer cases. We do a lot of full mouth reconstruction. Pretty much the only thing we don't do is any removable.
Okay. And do you currently use lab software to assign work to your employees?
We do. So
Awesome.
we use LabStar software
Hmm.
here in the lab. We've used a few different ones over the years, all with varying success. Um, Basically, our biggest thing was we started out with the old T-card system where we
Okay.
had paper T-cards and wrote out different steps for everybody,
Yeah.
and had to have somebody tracking where things went, where they needed to go in the lab, where they were, and it was an unbelievably time-consuming process. So I think on average every day we spent 2 hours creating
Wow.
T-cards
Yeah.
for the work that came in that day, and it was a continuous process. And so we were looking for something that would work. We were real familiar with T cards and the way that they schedule out by steps, and so we were looking for a software that stayed towards that kind of solution,
Okay.
and that's kind of where we ended up. And so
Yeah.
now we're using software to do what our T card system used to do.
Okay. Awesome. So, and then you assign the work based on task instead of case. Is that kind of how you do it?
That's correct. So we use it's all task based, which is the way the T card system kind of works. So we've broken down all of our different products into a group of steps, and then created those steps within our software.
Okay.
And it allows us to assign specific technicians. So let's say in the design, everyone's doing computer aided design now.
Hmm.
So you can tell it, here's the person that does designing. This is how many units each day he can design. And then the system helps schedule you, and you do that for every step throughout the process. And once you get it all set up, each day as you're entering cases, it knows how many each person can do in a given day, and what steps go to which person, and kind of just helps us to assign everything to each person and to track. So that's the other big thing. If I get a phone call from an office looking for a case, I immediately can see not only just the information about that case, but where it is within the lab and how far along it is. So there's no more running around the lab asking who's seen pan number whatever. It's
Yeah. It's all
exactly
in front
where
of you.
it's at. Right.
Okay. And then do you give access to the software to all your technicians, or is it a select amount of technicians that have access to it?
All of our technicians have access. They don't all have the same access.
Okay.
So I have a few that have full access, but they're technicians who receive cases, enter the cases into the system and can make changes. Those are mostly like manager level technicians.
Yeah.
Uh, and then all the other ones have what they call a technician access.
Hmm.
So they can do basic stuff. So if they're assigned a certain task, they can mark that they've completed that task or move the task back and forward. So if they're working on something and something breaks or cracks and they have to put it back in the process, they can back it up in its steps that it's, where the system thinks it's at. So they can do some little things, but they can't see my billing. They can't see, close cases out, do that kind of thing. Basically,
But
what they can do is check what they have to do for the day and advance things that
yeah.
they complete.
Yeah. Every employee, though, has access to kind of see what they need to do.
Yes,
Awesome.
yeah. Every day when the employees come in, the first thing they do is log into the software, and they basically get a view of what they need to do for the day. and it'll tell them what they need to do. And if there's something behind for whatever reason, if it mispressed the day before or if it broke the mail, it'll also tell them they need to do that, but it highlights it in red to alert them that that's behind schedule.
So are you guys pretty much paperless, or are you guys still also printing out lists of cases, or since everybody has access to the software, they're all kind of going pretty paperless?
We are probably a 50-50 mix.
Okay.
So it kind of depends on what your task is. So I have a couple of guys who will print out the list. So they actually have like desktop computers, and it's mostly the guys who are scanning cases in. So my
Okay.
scanner designer, he will go to his desktop station that he scans from, log in, and print his list for the day so that he can go across the lab to the shelf that's outside of our model room and pull all the cases that they have to work on. So he's
Gotcha.
printing it out more so he can circle it and know that he's pulled it, and then, you know, take it over and start working on it. Then a lot of my technicians, most of them all have iPads.
Okay.
So they all log in on their iPad and see what they need to do for the day. And that's nice because they can carry the iPad around with them
Yeah.
wherever they gather their cases. They gather up all their cases. And then as they do them throughout the day, they right there on the iPad, they can check them off and mark that they've completed them. So that's worked really well. So for the most part, we've gone relatively paperless, aside from a couple of technicians where it's just easier for them to print their list.
Yeah, but part of their workflow, and it's in conjunction with the software itself.
Yeah. I mean, they're still logging into the software to get that list.
Exactly. Awesome. And then do you utilize digital notes at all with your technicians, like via case records? Are your techs adding notes to case files, and how important, if they're doing that, is that to the workflow?
For the most part, a lot of the technicians in the intermediate tasks are not entering notes. It's more the managers that are doing it.
Okay.
So we do quite a bit, especially with different products like Emacs, let's say. That's a good example because you get the shade, now you got to pick which ingot you're going to mill your case out of. And when we do that, then we make case notes in the system to know what ingot we used. So if it, it comes back later and it says, match the crowns that you did 2 weeks ago, we can go back and see, okay,
Yeah, quickly.
exactly what ingot did we use. We also use it quite a bit for implant parts.
All right.
You're supposed to be tracking the implant parts a lot more now than we used to. So our software has a nice feature in it where I can scan the images that come from the implant manufacturer, which
Okay.
has a lot number and all that kind of information of the implant. I can take a quick picture with my phone and it uploads it directly into that case. So we
Awesome.
use it for quite a few different things.
Great. And you kind of answered this question, I think, in a little bit in the beginning when you were explaining your T-card situation. But how much time do you think you save scheduling cases and work to your techs digitally as opposed to traditional ways? I know you said the T-cards used to take 2 hours daily. How much time do you think you spend kind of digitally updating schedules?
Oof. I would say over 50% of the time has been saved.
Okay.
So,
yeah, cut it down to about an hour.
Right, because you still have to take all those cases and enter them into the system.
Yeah.
But now, once they're entered, they're also scheduled. So before we had to enter them into the system and then schedule them all. So it was kind of like 2 steps that had to be done. And then the only other thing that I do is I have my technicians who go through and enter them and get them scheduled. And then I also like to go in, there's a nice calendar view that I like
Okay.
to look into just to check how my production's working through the lab, see how even we are to the numbers that I have set that we should do every day. So I can pull it up and see in, let's say, designing, how many do I have for design, not just that day, but throughout the month. you know, and if I see one day that's really heavy and one day that's really light, I can move cases around so that it's a more of an even flow throughout the lab. And I do that pretty much on a daily basis, just checking in on it, you know, a quick look to make sure everything's, you know, flowing through nice and even.
Yeah,
And
make sure everything's
you know,
balanced out.
right. And I spend maybe 30 minutes a day doing that.
Okay.
So before, you know, you'd have to go over to the T card wall
Yeah.
and stare at it and try to figure out what you were looking at, you know, and manually move things around if one day was heavier than the other. So it's just really smoothed that process out.
Awesome. And kind of lastly, any general advice you would give to a lab that's kind of on the fence of whether or not to kind of move to digitally scheduling their cases with software?
As far as scheduling, I would say figure out what kind of system you want to use first and get
Okay.
that sorted before you even dive into it. So before we got into our digital system, you know, we had the T card system. So we already had all of our tasks broken down. We had the numbers that we wanted for each person each day. We had all that figured out. So when it got
Gotcha.
time to setting up the computer system, we had that information already. And so it was much easier to enter it into the computer and get it set up and running quickly.
Yeah,
I think
no, totally.
that was the key for us, was because we knew all that stuff and how we wanted it, we were able to get the software up and running quite quickly.
Yeah, and that's something I run into as a trainer of people using LabStar. A lot of times we do get to the point where I'm like, all right, what do you guys want to track? And they're, I don't know. You know,
Right.
they don't have an idea. And I'm like, well, okay, do you want to track model work? Do you want to track scanning and designing? And they go, well, I
Right.
don't know. Do I need a step for scanning and a step for designing? We just have one CAD CAM person. I'm like, well, then just maybe make a CAD CAM step. But yeah, so yeah, kind of know what you want going in.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, and
thank you so.
figuring out how many steps you want it's a difficult thing to do, because sometimes you can also make too many steps, and then you can
Yeah,
confuse the whole process. So yeah, it's a tough balance of getting the right number of steps to get it to go through the system and be able to track it correctly, and having so many steps that you've completely confused the system, which I've done on
or
one of our older
overwhelm your
softwares. We
employees.
made right, and one of our
Yeah,
old softwares, we made way too many steps, and it almost was unusable because we did too many.
yeah. And then
So
you just have
you
this
gotta,
big
you gotta find
beast.
a yeah, you got to keep it down to a minimum.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Sean, for
No
your
problem.
insight and kind of giving everybody a little background on how you manage your lab.
Sure, no problem. Anytime.
All right, take care.
All right, talk to you later.